Welcome to the Toastmasters experience. My name is Evelyn. Get inspired by today's Toastmasters insights. Enjoy the show. And welcome to another episode of the Toastmasters experience. I am so excited today because I have got a fellow Toastmaster podcaster from Australia. How lucky am I? So I'd like to welcome Mel to the show today.
Hi, Evelyn. How are you? Thanks for having me.
Yeah, it's so great to have you. Now, we're going to start at the beginning. What motivated you to join Toastmasters?
It started a long time ago, actually, at a speechcraft course when I was in high school, so many years ago. And I was so taken by that experience of Toastmasters from a local club coming to my high school and running us through a 6-week program. And I really enjoyed it. I just enjoyed the speaking part of it and the evaluation part, and it was a mini experience of Toastmasters. And then I left high school and went through uni, and it was only after I finished my time at university and had some time on my hands that I thought, I really want to get back into Toastmasters. And that was in about 1992, and I went along to my very first Toastmasters club as an adult with my mum, and we were a part of that club together for about 4 or 5 years. And then Toastmasters has really been a part of my life in and out, the long and winding road. Mm-hmm. I've tended to join Toastmasters clubs wherever I've moved. So Sydney and Brisbane and London and the Gold Coast, and really wherever I've gone, I've joined a club.
Well, yeah. I know they're all over the world, aren't they? So you can join wherever you go. Now, what clubs are you currently in, and how long have you actually been a Toastmaster?
Well, I'm a member of 2 clubs at the moment, Mount Gravatt, which is a community club, and I've been in that club for about 3.5 years. And then I joined Leading Edge Advanced Toastmasters about 18 months ago. I got back into the club at Mount Gravatt after about a 10-year break.
Wow.
And it was so nice coming back into that environment. And what motivated me to come back at that time was that I'd been doing a fair few Facebook Lives on my a Facebook page for my then business. And it was in playing those back and just looking at how I was recording and what I was saying and how I was saying it that I really felt that I needed to get back into Toastmasters.
Okay.
So I would say this is the longest stint I've done for quite a while, and I'm really into it, very committed to the organisation now.
When you first joined with your mom, did you say that was 1992?
Yes.
Okay. So you've just been in and out of Toastmasters throughout the last...
Yes.
Wow. Okay.
Yes.
But, yeah.
I wish it had been consistent. I wish, that I'd stuck with it the whole time, because I would be an epic speaker, but it's always served me at the time.
Well, I've been finding that as well, is that people sometimes just join for a year or two, because they want to give a speech at a wedding, and then they don't join for another 10 years. So it does come in and out of your life. Are you holding any executive positions in your club, or...
Yes. So in my Leading Edge Club, I'm currently the secretary this year, and that's the first time I've done that role. And then I'm also the area director for Area 26, which means that I look after about 5 clubs in the Mount Gravatt area. So it's quite a small area, in fact, and listening to how big some areas can be, I'm really lucky in that my 5 clubs are within about a 5-kilometre radius.
Mm-hmm.
Visiting them is very easy. But that's my first step into area level leadership, and it's quite different from the club level leadership. So it's been a great, I was president last year of Mount Gravatt, and that I think gave me a very good overview of how clubs work and what makes a quality club, and taking that experience into this year I think will set me up. So I'm really excited to be spending this year doing the area director role.
Were you talked into it?
I got a tap, yes.
Okay.
And as is the way. And I got started to get taps on the shoulders quite early on, and it was when I joined the Leading Edge Club, because it's an advanced club and they have all been area directors and a lot have been division level, leaders. And so there's a lot of experience in that club, and it was in that club that I started to get tapped. And all last year I was saying, no, 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 I don't have time. No, I don't have experience. No, no, no. And then pretty close to the end of, the Toastmasters year this year, it just became a yes. I just thought, well, I want to see what's beyond the club, and there is so much out there. And it just sort of almost changed my mind overnight, and here I am.
Yeah, I think if you extend yourself, you do learn a lot more, because being up in the Blue Mountains, I was in sort of a Blue Mountains bubble for 10 years. And it's not until I went down the hill and started going to advanced clubs that I realized, wow, there's another world out here. And, when you start going to those international conventions and start going to conventions, then you realize, wow, this is a fantastic organization. Now, I did hear earlier, so you were in London and you joined a London club? Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Which one did you join, and how long were you in that one?
Oh, I think I was in that club for about a year, and I can't actually even remember the name, to be honest, which is a bit sad. I'm sorry, London Club. But I remember it being very similar to the Australian clubs. And I know when my mother came over to visit me one time, she came along to Toastmasters as well, because we had been in the habit of going to clubs together. And so it's very similar. The clubs are run very similar, or in very similar ways around the world. And I think that's what makes it so great, is you can literally walk into any club and feel at home.
That is very true. And it's got a lot of similarities. Of course, we've got the agenda, everything's timed, and table topic speeches, and we kind of know what to expect. And it's almost like a family in a way.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So I love it. How has Toastmasters helped you in your personal and professional life?
Oh, in so many ways. For example, now I don't bat an eyelid. If I'm asked to do a presentation at work or training, which happens a lot in my marketing role, just being able to get up and speak, often off the cuff and sometimes in a prepared way, it just becomes easier. I know how to pull a speech together very quickly, and once you have those basic structures in mind, it doesn't take that long to actually get a speech together. Obviously, it then comes down to practicing the delivery of it, but I don't freak out when I'm asked to do that. I also think that some of the Pathways projects challenge you in different ways that can help in all aspects of your life. So the podcast, for example, I had procrastinated about starting a podcast for at least 10 years. I was listening to the likes of Pat Flynn and Tim Ferriss years ago, because I'm a marketer by profession, and I conceptually understood what needed to happen, but I was just, for whatever reason, not motivated to start. And so when the Pathways system came up and the elective 4 project came up, Create a Podcast, it was just the nudge I needed. So I would absolutely attribute that Pathways assignment giving me the nudge that had taken 10 years to get myself into action. So, and that's giving me new skills that are directly relevant to, I'm learning so much about sound editing and interviewing people and pulling together content. And as a marketer in my profession, that's really important. And it's just becomes another, body of work that I can point to and say, yes, I did that. It's sparking all sorts of interesting conversations at work about, if we were to run a podcast, might I host it or might I advise about it? So you just never know where these things are going to lead.
Yeah, it's so true. Even when you give a random speech somewhere, someone might come up after the speech and say, oh God, I really like that topic. What does that mean? And, I love that about Toastmasters. You just don't know where things are going to lead to,
Yes.
And even when you don't speak, I find you learn, just learn by observing. Do you have, so you've said that speeches come quite easy to you. Do you have a specific practice that you could share? Like, do you do a bit of a warm up, or do you record it? What do you do?
Yeah, it's interesting because my one of my mentees asked me how I go about memorizing my speeches or not, I guess, not using notes and ingesting them, I guess. And I hadn't really thought about it because I think I've been doing it for so long and I still have notes. I like to have notes sometimes just to have them on the lectern, but if I've rehearsed, I just get into it. So the way I go about preparing is to think about the topic and then I try to, if it's a story, there's an obvious beginning and an end with a story. Stories are great because you can picture in your mind how that story plays out. And so for me, there's a lot of visualizing the steps of that story. So I might be going on a holiday. So it might begin with the planning of the holiday and then the getting on the plane and then the getting to the destination. And I can map that through in my mind. And so I think I use a lot of visualization. I often like to write the speech out in detail and then rehearse it a few times. And then I'll often record myself delivering it and listen to it a few times and talk along with it. And yeah, so I've tried different techniques over the years. I think learning by rote gets you a little bit stuck if you get if you lose your place.
Yes, for sure. Yeah.
It leaves you nowhere to go. But I stumbled across the memory palace technique only quite recently. And it was when my mentee asked about, how do you memorize speeches? I'm like, well, I don't really think I memorized them. And I was trying to find some videos to send him. And I came across this memory palace technique, which may not be new to everyone, but it was certainly new to me. And it's about associating parts of your speech with elements of a room that you're very familiar with. And I need to delve more into this because if I can really get my head around how that works and how to apply it, I think the speeches will have more impact. So that's my next little project is to work out how the memory palace technique works.
Yeah, I've heard of that. I have heard of that. Or even when you move, like you move a certain way to a certain part of the speech, and that's how that, like the muscle memory kicks in, like, when your foot is placed there. Oh, this is when I say this. So yeah, I have heard of that as well. What is your favorite role to do, say, during a meeting? Is there a role that you like to do?
I actually like them all and I like the variety of them. And what I find has happened in the last couple of years, because I've done a lot of competing in the evaluation contest. And so I find that I am evaluating a lot. It feels like very often I'm doing the evaluator role, which I love because it's an important part of Toastmasters. So I do love giving evaluations and giving feedback to people. And regardless of how experienced the speaker is, I always try to find a point for improvement because that's what that speaker is looking for. And I feel that that's what it's our duty to do as a Toastmaster, is to give feedback as well as to say what we loved about their speech. So I think evaluations for me are one of my favorite areas, but I really like any of the roles just because they challenge you to either prepare speeches or to be able to handle impromptu situations. So yeah, I like all of the aspects of the program.
You just mentioned that you competed in evaluation. Have you competed in the other competitions?
I've competed in the table topics contest and once in the humorous contest, although I was the only competitor in my club, so I don't really count that as a competition, but I got to area level and got to compete there. And table topics, I think I've talked at division level there, and then evaluation was I competed at the district level this year. So competing at district level was a real eye-opener. I just learned a lot just by the people that you're hanging around with at those higher levels of contest and the evaluations you're getting. And yeah, I just love the competition aspect of Toastmasters. It really pushes you to become a better speaker.
Yeah, like I said earlier, you can stay in the comfort of your bubble, but to push yourself even further, just even entering in a competition, even just a club competition, it just pushes you to go further. So what about, are there any sort of resources or tools that, besides Toastmasters, that have helped you to improve your public speaking skills?
Yeah, I think listening to other speakers. So whether it's TED Talks or other podcasters, and I've been listening to podcasts probably since they came out in the 90s when I got my first iPod. And I listened to the likes of Pat Flynn and Tim Ferriss and Tony Robbins and the digital marketers and the inspirational speakers. So I find that listening to other speakers and hearing about how they deliver their message and where they place the emphasis and how they structure their speeches, I just find that listening to those kinds of people is inspiring, but you can also deconstruct their speeches and go, okay, I can learn something from that. I think it's similar as well, listening to TED Talks. And there are so many TED Talks, but listening to TED Talks about topics you're interested in and then working out, well, why did that get my attention and why did that speaker have the impact, and almost trying to reverse engineer what they've done. And so, okay, I could incorporate something like that in my speeches. So for me, I think it's quite hands-on and listening to great speakers speak about things that they're passionate about. That's probably how I most inspire myself outside of Toastmasters.
Yeah. So now you do have a podcast that's,
I do.
yes. So I wanted to, because I know with a project, you really, what is it? Is it only like an hour of content?
An hour.
It's only an hour of content. So you fulfilled that.
Yes.
So what has motivated you to go further? Do you just want to keep going until, how long do you want to keep doing this podcast, your podcast?
Yeah, absolutely. I think I'm up to about episode 37, and the last count I did, I think it was about 18 hours of recorded content. So I just really enjoyed the practice of doing it. And when I first started the project, as you say, we only have to do an hour's worth of recorded content. I mapped out a series of 20 episodes, and it was when I was VP PR. Oh, no, actually I was president, but I had been VP of Public Relations for the club the year before, and I knew the kinds of questions that I was getting and that new members or potential members would have about Toastmasters. And so when I mapped out that first 20 episodes, I wanted half of them to be almost educational about what is Toastmasters, how does it help you improve public speaking, but impromptu speaking and prepared speeches, and what are the roles. I wanted it to be a series that we could point potential guests to say, hey, have a listen, get a feel for this organisation even before you come into the door. And then I wanted every other episode to be an interview. So I wanted the experience of interviewing guests and also the opportunity to have my own solo episodes as well. And so that's how I designed it. And 20 episodes went very quickly, actually.
Okay.
And so then I just started to really enjoy interviewing guests and finding out, as we're doing, about other Toastmasters and their journey. And I really love that. And that's the part that I want to continue. So I want to keep going until I can't really think of anything else to say, which for Toastmasters is probably not going to happen.
I will definitely be directing, new members or potential members to your podcast.
And for a newbie, I would recommend starting at episode 1 and working backwards or working up the episodes. They are really actually in a sequence, I feel, in a sequence that outlines Toastmasters in a logical way. And it was interesting because when I got to I think it was about episode 29 or episode 30, that took me right up to the end of this Toastmasters year. And then the current series I'm doing is going to be about my observations as an area director. So I've slightly pivoted the podcast now. And at the beginning, I say, look, if you are a new Toastmaster, head back to the first 30 episodes because the next 30 or so are going to be more about more advanced topics or more about Toastmasters beyond the club and more about things like podcasting and some of these more advanced topics. So that's where it's heading going forward.
That's absolutely fantastic to have it in that sequential order. So you're doing the podcast, but is there a project you're working on?
Yes, I think I'd like to work towards my DTM, and being an area director is a part of that. So there's at least another year of that to go. One of the other things I would like to do as a DTM project, so the Distinguished Toastmaster project has a few criteria. One is holding a club officer position. Another is holding an area leadership position. I think you have to be a club coach or a mentor. The other part is the DTM project, which is sort of a big project that stands to benefit either Toastmasters or an organisation that I choose. And what I would like to do for that, particularly in the 100th year of Toastmasters, as we're in, is to interview about maybe 10 or 20 of the not founding members, but the long-term members of District 69, which is my district, and get them to talk about the history of District 69 and stories about back in the day. So all of my guests now are talking about current day aspects of Toastmasters, but I'd really like to have a bit of a recorded history of the district, and I think that would be a cool project to get involved in and extend the life of the podcast.
What a fantastic idea. Now, what is something that you have learned from Toastmasters that has surprised you?
Again, so many things, but I think probably the most staggering part is how much scope there is to continue to learn outside of a club. And you don't think about that when you first set foot in the door, because you just want to learn how to not want to shrivel up and die when you speak, if you're that nervous. So once you've overcome that and you've started to visit perhaps other clubs or compete and get outside the club, you then start to realise, and you touched on this earlier, but you start to realise how much scope there is outside of the club. And we all pay the same membership fee each year. And for me, knowing that I could be going to a couple of different meetings or contests or different sorts of training, all for the same membership fee, is amazing. So there are so many amazing opportunities. For example, a few weeks ago, we had judge training, how to be a contest judge. And that was run by Mark Hunter, who's a former winner of the World Championship of Public Speaking. And he just ran that session. We had one the other night, which was run by one of our My Leading Edge Toastmaster buddies, about media training. And he's an ex-radio announcer and had been for 30 years. And so he was doing media training, and all this is run mostly for free. And there's just so many opportunities like that I don't think you can get in any other organisation anywhere.
Yeah, it really is such a great financial investment. I mean, it's not even, I've looked at other public speaking courses and they're thousands of dollars.
Yes.
And it's just a weekend or it's a week. How do you learn how to speak in a week? I mean,
I know.
Seriously. I mean, that's,
Exactly.
That's why Toastmasters is great. You get this constant practice, and it's just minimal, such a minimal outlay. It's been. I've just totally enjoyed speaking to you. But I want to ask just one last question: what advice would you give someone who is considering joining Toastmasters?
Yes, well, the obvious answer is to just do it. But what I would say is, even before that, if you are considering going to a Toastmasters club, reach out to the club through their Facebook page or through the Find a Club section on the Toastmasters website and make contact to let them know that you'd like to come, and so that they know to expect you. Because what will likely happen then, if the club is doing its job, is that you should receive a nice friendly call or email from one of the members, and that will give you the sense of knowing someone even before you set foot in the door. And I know that when that's been me on the receiving end of a person saying, hey, I'd like to come to a club, I make sure that when the meeting night comes, I train my eyes at the door and I am waiting for that person to come through the door. And the second I see someone I don't know, I make a beeline for them.
Yes.
and introduce myself and welcome them, and then sit them near another Toastmaster. And yeah, it's a lot of people will say just do it, but I think having that pre-contact and just knowing someone else by name when you walk into a club can help to put you at ease, because it's like, I know someone.
Yeah.
I know. I even if it's a brief email exchange or a text message or whatever, it's just that someone's going to be there waiting for me. And I think that helps to ease the anxiety of walking into a place that you don't know.
Yeah, definitely.
Thank you so much for reaching out to me on Instagram. And I love how Toastmasters is just such a friendly environment where you came across my podcast and you reached out, and within a few days we've connected and recording this, which is great because, as you said, it's so rare to find other Australian podcasting Toastmasters. So thank you for reaching out. I'm really glad we got to connect, and I love your podcast and the work you're doing.
Thanks again, Mel. I'm just so grateful. I look forward to listening to your next episode of The Talking Toastmaster.
Thanks so much, Evelyn.
Thank you so much for your company. Please tune in next time to the Toastmasters Experience.